Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and for the past few days I have been working on a Blade Flurry Assassin, which turned out to be dagger based. I didn't really have too much concrete idea of where I was going to take this character when I first made it. I was just simply going to make an assassin based, physical, poison and bleed sort of thing, Blade Flurry character. And at this point, I think I'm confident enough to give you guys a guide or a rundown of how to build a similar character, because it did end up being pretty cost efficient and rather effective for what it can do, the damage it outputs, and the playstyle it exhibits. Bear in mind, Blade Flurry could get a nerf before the next league, so you may want to get onto it ASAP if you feel like playing some of this. That said, I think even if it gets nerfed, a build like this should still be rather strong. The skill mechanically is just very strong and also very fun to play. I could see myself still playing this and still enjoying the skill even if I cop something like a 50% damage nerf, which, like I said, probably isn't too likely anyway. I imagine there may be some little nerf, but who knows, I could see them keeping it the way it is, just because they're happy with the skill and they want you to play it. In any case, just showing off a bit of gameplay in the past couple minutes, and now just a sort of DPS test, just to show you what it looks like at this stage with the gear and setup I'm about to show you. It is a Binos main hand, and we're in a 5-link belly, and the DPS is pretty damn impressive, for my money anyway. This is a very clean Shaper kill, and it was very fast on the Shaper DPS when you get some clean damage on him. I was doing quite a lot of damage and melting him rather fast. Now, considering that's on a fairly decent budget compared to many of the other builds I've played, this may well be one of the most cost effective for the damage it deals. Probably won't be the biggest damage build unless you really do start investing quite some serious currency, and maybe even running an Abyssus, which I'll get into a bit later for the actual guide itself. But for what it is, it's definitely a fun build to start out with, and scalable with as much currency as you'd want to scale. It can start out with a Binos, and I'm pretty sure clear all of the content, or you can go hundreds of exalts in and just destroy Shaper within half a second. It's up to you entirely. You can also go CI, and I'll hopefully cover a bit of that in the guide too. This, however, is just a life-based character, and in the next few days I will hopefully have more sort of complete Shaper and Atziri and Guardian kills for you guys to see, just so you can see exactly how the character performs, how you should play it, and yeah, what kind of damage we're dealing with, and gear if need be, upgrades. I'll also definitely try out Abyssus and see what kind of damage we can pull off. But for now, this is all I've got for you for a clip, and I'll get straight into the guide teaching you how to build this character from scratch. Righto, so just to start off with, yes, I have not shaved all of November, and this is the best I can do, so stop judging me, thank you very much. The character is currently a level 88 Assassin Shadow class, and these MTX, if you're wondering, this back here is the second supporter pack that just came out, Cloak, Breach Lord Cloak, and this is what the Breach weapon effect looks like. It applies on both weapons, by the way, if you don't know that. Supporter pack MTXs typically do. That's kind of what it looks like. I think they're pretty nifty, but it's up to you entirely. So the character is an assassin, and it is built around having lots of power charges from Deadly Infusion, as well as then scaling crit and crit multi, and then getting into Noxious Strikes and Toxic Delivery so that your Fizz and your Chaos can do lots of bleed and poison damage. So the bleed purely based off of your physical, the poison based off of your chaos and physical damage. So to start out with, basically it's dagger based. You can go sword based, you can go Varanastra, you can probably even build a claw character around this sort of thing. I went with a Binos and a dagger base with all of these dagger nodes over here and some over here, just because it's a fairly easy to get weapon and it's rather strong and should take us plenty of places, and turns out it has. So Binos itself, something like 230 DPS, and a good baseline weapon to get yourself started in a build like this. It's not the fastest though, so if you want a faster playstyle, maybe buy a faster weapon, craft a faster one, or don't go daggers, I don't know. But essentially we're getting all these, and these as far as dagger specific nodes, and with power charges, thanks to Deadly Infusion and just this crit here, this power charge here, and a little bit of crit there, I am at 95 crit with the current gear and binos because it has such a high base crit. So that's what you're really looking for in a binos, to carry you to high base crit. It's not very fast though, and then it'll give you lots of poison and physical damage. So at the moment, as you can see, all our damage is currently physical. When you press Zeri Flask, you get a bunch of chaos damage, and when you have a Death's Hand in your offhand, you'll only be attacking with your dagger because it's a mace and Blade Flurry doesn't use maces, so it's a stat stick in your offhand. You have a chance, or not a chance, you gain Unholy Might for 2 seconds on crits, meaning you gain 30% of your fizz as extra chaos damage basically all of the time. Since you're always critting, you're always going to be getting that. So that's another huge chunk of damage you're going to be scaling your poison off of. As well as that, you'll sometimes get power charges when you stun. Don't really rely on that, it's not terribly good. So besides that, that's pretty much our weapons. They're both rather cheap to get. Might be tough to get this at the start of a league though. The rest of the gear is really quite basic. You're looking at a Belly of the Beast, rare gloves, rare belt, rare boots, a nice steering if you can get it, a rare amulet, and a Void Heart. So the purpose of Void Heart is to basically double your chance to bleed and poison, because our current chance over here is 40% chance to poison against bleeding enemies and 30% chance to bleed. So mostly what you're looking for is a high chance to poison on your Void Heart, because this is pretty much enough bleed to take care of bleeding a target with something like Blade Flurry since it attacks so fast, but you then only have 40% chance to poison against that bleeding target. So if you can get up to 40% on this Void Heart, that means you now have 80% chance to poison against that target, and just plain 40% against targets that are immune to bleed. So that's what you're looking for in your Void Heart, and I think it's fairly worth using. You don't really have to. This will probably do enough for the most part, but I think it's worth using. Belly of the Beast, just so you can get lots of life, because I'm trying to hit 6k on this character, and it is very much doable in the next level or so. Everything else pretty standard. At this stage, I'm using a Star Conjures because I was using a Rat's Nest, but I was capped on crit without even wearing it, so I decided I'd turn it in for a Star Conjure. Still has attack speed, still has a bit of crit, and a bunch of life. It's not really that worth using if you can get a good helm with life, evasion, accuracy, resists. That's all pretty good stuff. It means you wouldn't need accuracy on one of these two pieces that I currently have accuracy on, and that would be much more efficient because a steel ring like this is probably rather expensive. A steel ring with just life and physical is a lot easier to get. So if you can get accuracy today instead, that's probably an upgrade. Gloves, I went with some life, attack speed, and accuracy, as well as one resist, and this is where all of my mana leech comes from. Physical attack damage leeched as mana, crafted by Haku. You're going to have to get some leech somewhere for the build, whether it's here, either of your jewelry pieces, or just picking up a mana leech node down here. So if you don't want to bother getting some mana leech on your gear, just go ahead and spend 1 point for that, and that should take care of all of your mana issues. So as you can see, in town I'm at 52 crit right now. That's without any power charges. When you get your power charges up, you go up to 95 because power charges are so goddamn strong with Deadly Infusion, and because we have a base crit of 10. So it really does scale up quite highly, and for the most part, Unstable Infusion will keep you capped at crit charges almost all the time because you attack so much with Blade Flurry, but on boss fights it can be a little sketchy, so we do use an Orb of Storms, Curse on hit, power charge on crit, and vulnerability setup. So during boss fights you're just going to run around and use your Blade Flurries and occasionally drop an Orb of Storms, and that should keep you up at max crit pretty much all of the time, and I think it's rather worth doing on the boss fights, certainly. So that setup goes in your gloves because it's an energy shield evasion sort of setup. Now my hit chance with these two items here, which are all of my accuracy, is 88%, and with Golem up it's 90%. You only really need about 87 plus. Go for 90 if you can though, and yeah, that's where you get all of your accuracy, the Golem, and hopefully you can get it on at least 2 pieces, and that covers all of your accuracy. As far as all auras go and reservation, it's actually very flexible. It's entirely up to you guys. I'm not really too sold on what I like to use. Most of the time you can use hatred. That'll add a whole bunch of extra cold on top of your physical damage, so then you'll be shattering a lot. Without hatred you won't be shattering at all. I kinda don't really like shattering that much, especially with the Bino's poison prolif, and it just doesn't feel terribly nice. So quite a lot of the time I am running Herald of Ash and Grace instead of hatred, so that my evasion goes from 23% chance to evade and 3k evasion all the way up to 10k and 44%. And you don't really need the hatred damage, but for some fights you kind of feel like you do want maximum damage, so you take off Grace and put on hatred, or just for certain maps like Porcupine maps where you want to shatter them, you might want to run hatred. As well as that, Herald of Ash just gives you a bit of extra fire damage, just a bit of damage, and then some overkill damage to help clear as well from the Herald of Ash effect. So that's what I've been using, but on top of that I do also use Arctic Armor sometimes when I don't think I need Herald of Ash, or if you can get a level 4 Enlighten, you can run all three at once. I can run all three with a level 3 Enlighten, but it really gets me kinda close on mana, as you can see. 11 mana cost, 48 unreserved. Essentially, as long as you're hitting something, you will leech it back, and it is sustainable, so it's not too bad, but it's not the most comfortable playstyle. So typically I'll only have 2 of these up at any one time. In any case, so that's basically the auras. You can do whatever you want. You can throw on Herald of Ice if you want as well for extra shattering goodness on top of hatred. That's entirely up to you guys, whatever you want. They're pretty damn flexible. Even run Purity to help cap your resists if you want. Boots, these are completely insane. I crafted them myself, and they are the reason I can get away with so many resists not on my belt, for example, and not needing a resist helmet, which I otherwise would. Ring, I crafted that myself as well. Basically what you're looking for ideally is a steel ring with some physical damage on it. Doesn't have to be though. You're not that reliant on fizz damage from your steel ring to scale your damage. On your amulet you would like some fizz and some crit multi. Those are the 2 most important DPS stats there. Maybe accuracy if you're really low. And then some life, some all stats, because you will need a bit of all stats to get up to enough int typically for some of the stuff you might want to do, like casting a vulnerability, and enough strength to potentially drop a Warchief totem, which I haven't been doing recently because I may start to swap into a Wither totem with a Wither with a spell totem setup, because typically you're going to want at least 1 totem, either the Warchief or the Wither totem. The Warchief isn't going to do any damage, basically, but he will give you 17% more melee damage while active, which is almost 20% increased damage as long as he's up. So that's fairly worth having. He just dies rather quickly, and I don't know. I haven't really been using him too much. I think Wither is probably the biggest DPS upgrade there. Besides that, Fortify, faster attacks, Whirling Blades, and Blood Magic is your travel setup that I've been going with. Pretty good idea to get it on Blood Magic. Your belt, if you can get reduced flask charges used, that'll help sustain your flasks. Otherwise, just resists and life. And that's about it for gear. As far as your main setup goes, I've talked about it before, I think, but Blade Flurry is going to be pretty reliant on physical damage here, so mostly what you're looking for is scaling your fizz, and that's Blade Flurry, melee physical. Those are your 2 staples. I'd then say increased area is your 3rd one, and then faster attacks. That's essentially the 4 link you're going to be going with. Beyond that, a 5th link, I went with increased crit damage. You could go crit strikes if you really need it, but I obviously don't. I went with crit damage. It seems to do a bit more damage than even a level 21 added chaos. When fully scaled up with charges. My tooltip, by the way, I'll get over that in a second, barely changes. As you can see, 2800 to 3k. When you're fully charged up, crit damage does more damage, but you can use an add chaos if you want instead. You can even use a Fortify instead of crit damage early on, just to get safer. But as you can see, my 6th link I think is probably going to be Fortify. It could be added chaos. I'm really not sure. There's not a great 6th link beyond this point. You could use Life Leech. There's really not much. You could use added fire. It doesn't get scaled by our bleed and poison, but it is a good chunk of damage. Added fire would probably be the highest source of next damage, if not added chaos. But we'll get to that if we have a 6-link. So that's your staple there, these 4, and then go for crit damage if you can. Ice Golem, that's pretty obvious. Immortal Call, cast when damage taken, increased duration, and Vaal Haste. That's your cast when damage taken, and that's your Vaal Haste setup. Over here, Blood Rage, I keep that up almost all of the time. And Vaal Lightning Trap whenever you want to shock some bosses. Let's get into some Flasks. Now I'm running at Series Promise, that gives you some Chaos Leech, which is kinda nice, and a bunch of Chaos damage from your Fizz. Lion's Roar, essentially almost as good as a melee physical gem. Halfway there, almost. A bit more. 35% more melee physical damage during the effect, so that's a really strong multiplier for your damage. As you can see, you go all the way up to 2300 from 1700. The knockback can be good and it can be bad. It just depends on the situation, but I'd probably still play with it regardless. Just you'll have to get used to the knockback. Witchfire, kind of not too necessary in the build, but it does have 68% increased damage over time during the effect and gives you vulnerability. So it's pretty nice for mapping when you don't want to self-cast your vulnerability with Orb of Storms. And that's basically why I have it. You don't really have to have it. By all means, you could just use a regular Stibnite or something else entirely. And lastly, a Silver Flask with bleed or freeze immunity would be good. Now that's also not a very necessary flask. You can always shove a Taste of Hate in. You can shove a Dying Sun in. It's entirely up to you guys how expensive you want to make the build. Speaking of which, I don't actually have any area besides the area gem for Blade Flurry. Originally I was spec'd up here and it ended up being too much travel to really only get some area and maybe some crit multi. I decided it wasn't worth it, as well as the power charge, because just the area gem by itself, no carcass jack, nothing else, seems to be all the area I need for mapping. If you want more area, by all means go for it, but I think this was enough for me and I was happy with it, so I didn't really bother getting any more at this stage. Now when you want to go single target, of course, Conk effect in place of area of effect, and that increases your damage quite a lot. Now speaking of the tooltip, that's not DPS over here, that says average damage. So each hit will on average hit for 2800, and then you have attack time 0.16, meaning you'll attack something like 6 times a second. It's going to be low, it's always going to be fairly low because we're assassin based, and a lot of our damage will be bleed, poison, and buff related. So just with all the full buffs that I can show you, the highest my tooltip can go with Conk effect, for reference. I guess no auras at this stage, because most of the time I'm going to be running Grace. As high as it goes is 7k average. Now we are very reliant on power charges, so at my maximum fully buffed it'll be something like 15k, maybe 16k. I can get into that in future videos, but yeah, the tooltip's not very important, so don't worry too much about it. Just use it as a reference point for when you're getting more damage upgrades and see how you're going. That's pretty much all I need to cover there. As far as the passive tree goes, you start as a shadow, you get all kinds of good chaos and fizz nodes, crit dagger nodes. These are the last nodes I've just picked up for my character. Acrobatics, and then you're doing a lot of traveling, basically just for life. There's enough damage from the build and the skill itself that you don't need too much damage scaling. You mostly just want life. What you're looking for in jewels is damage, fizz damage, crit multi, and life, ideally. Yeah. So that's a pretty good jewel, but ideally it's something more like this: life, melee crit strike, multiplier, fizz damage. Same thing over here and over here. So that's kind of what I went for. You can go for some other things. You can go for more attack speed if you really want. That'll make the build feel quite a bit nicer. When you're leveling the character, you'll start out here, you'll go up here, you go down here, here, and then here, and that's when you start going to the dagger nodes. I'd personally go through the crit, I'd grab these dagger nodes, then I'd go up here and grab these dagger nodes, and then down here and grab these crit nodes. At that point you have pretty much all the crit you need. Your normal lab will be Unstable Infusion, preferably, and then if you really want more crit, grab Deadly Infusion, but I went for Unstable Infusion, then Noxious Strike, then Toxic Delivery, because I didn't really need this last bit of crit for a very long time, and I used a diamond flask for a long time too. So I focused on filling out my poison damage and just my power charges initially. The bandits, life, attack speed, and power charge. I think I covered absolutely everything there is to know about this character. You can run it as CI. I don't have a tree up for you for that right now. I personally prefer to run it as life. It's just more comfortable to build and to play. But yes, you can be CI. It'll probably be better, maybe a bit more expensive. And bear in mind, getting the colors may be a little harder because you'll probably be running 4 off colors on a ES chest, maybe 3 if you go with an Out of Chaos as your other link. Oh, I think that's everything for the guide. If you have any more questions, always dive on into the stream. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoy a character like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.